I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. I've done a number of blogs over the last 6 or 7 years on land assemblies and now this new phenomenon downtown Vancouver called unit assemblies, where developers start to accumulate units in usually smaller buildings, boutique buildings, 30, 35, 40 units or less, and eventually get to a certain point where they own more than 80% of the units. They can then petition, go to court to get that strata dissolved so that they can redevelop it and build a 10 or 15 or 20 story high-rise, depending on what it's zoned for. So I'll post a link to this article in my video here, but if you're not following me on Twitter, you should, because I've been posting a lot of these articles on land assemblies and that kind of thing on my Twitter feed. But I won't bore you with all the details here, but I just wanted to give you a quick example here and how, in some cases, greed can cost these people dearly in their final selling price. But this was a story about a boutique building, 36 units on Barclay and Thurlow in the West End here. And the developer in this case had, over the last 6 or 7 years, slowly been buying up all the units in this building. It got to the point where he owned all but 2. And they had been going back and forth with these 2 holdouts for many years trying to sell. The seller, the main seller, the main one, wanted $10 million for his unit, and it was assessed at $672,000. This went back and forth for many years. The developer last year came back with an offer of $3.5 million, which is far, far more than what a lot of those units had sold. Remember, some of these had been sold 5 years ago at $300,000. But the holdout decided he didn't want $3.5 million or possibly more. They were willing to negotiate. So it finally got to a point where it went to court. The developer owned 98% of the units, 95% of the units, and it went to court. The judge ruled that the money that the developer was offering at $3.5 million was more than enough, that the seller should have taken it. At the end of the day, the judge ordered that this one holdout received $2.2 million. So this guy's greed cost him. He could have had somewhere between $3.5 to $4 million a year ago, held out, wanted $10 million, ended up getting the unit for sale and given $2.2, which is still a nice payout. As I say, the unit was assessed at $672,000. But it's an example of what's going on now in these unit assemblies. And you're going to see a lot more of this over the next 5 to 10 years, especially in areas like the West End. And it's one of the prime examples of what I've been telling people on my blog here, which is good things happen to you when you're in the market, you own your principal residence or you own investment properties, and you stay in the market. You're an investor. You're not a speculator or flipper. If you keep them long enough, these are the kind of things that can happen. Not in every case, these are pretty rare, but in a lot of circumstances, especially moving forward in areas like the West End, you're going to start to see a lot more of these unit assemblies, and you're getting a lottery ticket here. You're winning the lottery if you get involved in these. So I've had many of these over the years. I've blogged about it if you go back into some of my later blogs. I've had sales. I just had one last year on Westminster Highway near the Auto Mall that eventually will get turned into a land assembly. But give you a couple of updates here. I've got a client right now who is living near Nanaimo and Broadway area. Now, this guy, it's his principal residence. He bought this house about 18 years ago, and they are now getting involved into a land assembly. Part of the Grandview redevelopment program, the city, about 1.5 years ago, Vancouver, rezoned this area for multifamily. And they put an FSR, or a floor space ratio. At that time, they gave it, I think, about a 1.8, which would allow, and it's what they call a CM2. I won't bore you with all the details, but what that allows is commercial retail space on the ground and 1 or 2 floor condo above. Now, just about 6 months ago, the city of Vancouver revised that now from something like 1.8 to 2.5 FSR. Merry Christmas. Now that is allowing a potential developer to build an extra couple more floors of condo, maybe 4 or 5 floors. So it just boosted the value of that land. Now, I'm not involved in the land assembly, and I never sold this guy his house that he bought 18 years ago. I didn't even know him. He's an investment client of mine. But he is now looking, they're just getting ready to put this assembly together, somewhere between $3.8 and $4.2 million for his house, which is assessed at about 1.7. So that's a nice premium. I can tell you that one of the guys involved in this land assembly bought his house just 3 years ago and paid about $1.1 million. Now he's sitting on about a $4 million payday when this assembly comes together. But there's also some funny things in that area going on. There's a number of land assemblies that have already been put together, and some are under construction now. And there's been some holdouts in there too, similar to this guy on Barclay, where the developer tried to put 6 or 7 or 8 homes together. There's one on Broadway now where there was a holdout. At the end of the assembly, guy wanted 2 or 3 times more than what everyone else was getting for their home. He held out. It was a Mexican standoff. One side had to blink, and in this case, the developer didn't blink. The developer put together the units that he had, put together the development permits, the drawings for the building they wanted to construct, and went through with it. And once they get to that stage, even if this holdout decides, okay, I give in, I will sell now, a lot of times it's too late. The developer now has spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars based on the properties they do own. It's too late to go back. And there's 2 cases like that in this Broadway and Nanaimo area where there was a couple of holdouts, and it's going to be interesting to see how these look. Here you've got now you're stuck with a single family home and then a land assembly of 8 or 9 homes beside it. And you're not going to be able to do anything with that single home on the corner. You can't develop anything with it. So essentially he has been shut out now. And it's going to be interesting when this is all built. You're going to have a 4 or 5 story condo complex hugging up against a single family home, which is going to look awfully odd and depreciate that house substantially. So there's going to be some interesting things going on down the road here with land assemblies and unit assemblies, and how a lot of guys are going to try and get greedy and hold out for a better price. In some cases, maybe it'll work out for them. In other cases, it might not, like these 2 that I just mentioned here. One other thing I want to point out here, I've done many blogs on what I would call the enterprising buyer. I had a land assembly or a potential land assembly in Richmond on Steveston Highway a few years ago. I was selling some homes that I was telling people that, you know, the enterprising buyer here would buy a home like this. It's on a busy street, lots of traffic. It's not the most desirable location. But the point being is that you buy it, either live in it, hang on to it, or put a tenant in the house. Putting a tenant in the house probably isn't going to produce enough income on a busy street like that to cover your mortgage costs, all your costs, that's for sure. You're going to have to supplement it. But the payout or the white knight scenario down the road, and I can guarantee it, is going to be a land assembly 5, 10, 12 years down the road. It's going to happen. It's not if, it's when. The city of Richmond in that area was slowly starting to rezone a lot of that. This parcel had already been rezoned for what they call compact lots, so you could subdivide and build 2 detached homes. But the real payout would be down the road if they rezone it for multifamily, for townhomes or condos. So the enterprising buyer here, buy it, keep it, rent it out or live in it, and 5, 10, 12 years, 15 years down the road, you are going to get a substantial payout, 2 or 3 times your assessed value. One more thing, I don't promote my listings. Every now and again here, I've gone on my blog here and said I've got a fantastic house or a potential here to make some good money on. I've got one right now, if you go to my homepage, on Prince Edward Street. Now this is an example of a person who has a long-term vision. If they were to buy this house, they are going to have a windfall down the road. Now this house is on Prince Edward Street, faces east. It's at Prince Edward and Marine Drive. Marine Drive is a hideously busy street. Traffic 18 to 20 hours a day, truck traffic, it's noisy. The advantage, at least with this house, is it's not facing Marine Drive. It's an end lot facing Prince Ed, so it sides onto Marine Drive. Now, an enterprising buyer here, it's only an 11-year-old house. It's a fantastic house. It has a 2-bedroom self-contained legal suite downstairs. You also have a potential to add a 1-bedroom suite if you want. It's all ready to go, separate entrance. And you've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath upstairs. So whether you buy the house as a principal residence and live upstairs and rent the basement, or maybe an investor just buys the house and rents the whole thing out, hang on to it for 10 or 15 years, and the lottery ticket payout here will be a land assembly sometime in the next 10 or 15 years. I don't think it's going to happen within the next 10, although if you talk to the neighbors who I've met, a couple of them are convinced that this is going to be land assembled within the next 5. I think that's optimistic. However, this is just east of Main Street on Marine Drive. If you go down, of course, to Marine Drive and Cambie, of course, that's all been land assembled, and they are moving their way further east. There's a large assembly now going on Marine Drive, east of Cambie Street. So it is slowly moving further east. I'm going to say in 10 years or 15 years, there's going to be a very good chance that this will be rezoned for a 3, 4, 5-story condo with retail CM2 on the bottom. So there are opportunities out there. The thing is, though, you're going to have to buy it, have a long-term horizon on it, rent it out or keep it, and wait for this Christmas Day to arrive, which it will. So there's always opportunities. The moral of the story is here, what I've always told people on my blog. Good things happen when you're in the market and you stay in the market. The exact same thing happens in the stock market. I've blogged about this before as well. I don't rarely ever sell any of my holdings. I'm always buying and adding to my portfolio. But not a month goes by with a portfolio like mine that something good doesn't happen. Either I'm always continuously getting dividend boosts. All the companies I own continuously every year give me a dividend increase. So I'm getting, with the portfolio I've got, every week I'm getting a dividend increase announcement on one of my holdings. But I'm also getting things like buyback announcements where the company will announce they're buying back $5 or $10 billion of their own shares, which is going to boost the price over time. You're getting stock splits, you're getting mergers and acquisitions which bump up the price. Every week I open up my portfolio news and I'm getting some Christmas gift here. And that's what happens when you just own quality companies and just keep them for the long term. You're always getting good news. It's great. It's like Christmas every day for me. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, if you haven't joined my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, please do. See you next week.